Thanks.
I tried to include the background material in this particular motion so that you can sort of get up to speed with what the issue is. Essentially, this issue goes back around about 30 years to the Ash Wednesday 2 bushfire in the Bridgewater area. There was a property belonging to a Mr. Todd, which was burnt down. And instead of rebuilding the property, Mr. Todd decided to donate the land on which the property stood to council on the proviso that council build a memorial to Ash Wednesday, presumably Ash Wednesday victims, and a memorial garden on the site. For various reasons, which are largely historical, that didn't occur. There was a trust put over the land at the time. And then something like about 25 years later, council went to, sometime in the 90s, there was a retirement village built on the site, the Bridgewater Retirement Village, which was formerly owned by council. And then sometime about 5, 6, actually, I think it was about 7 years ago, council went to actually sell all of its retirement villages and found out about this trust, which had somehow been forgotten. And so as part of the process of actually selling the Bridgewater Retirement Village, council had to apply to the Supreme Court to have the trust moved to another piece of land, and that piece of land was Carapook Park. The conditions of the trust, which is included in the background material, indicate that there's still an obligation on council, without any time limit on it, to place a memorial for Ash Wednesday victims, well, Ash Wednesday and a garden on the site. So there was a bit of work done a few years ago now, some public consultation on that, but it seems to have been dropped by council. And so that's why I asked the question on notice about that, and the answers to that question are in the material. But I'd like us to move on to the next step, which is essentially to actually formally consider an allocation of funding in the 2026-27 annual business plan and budget development process. So that's what this motion is about. And I think it's been a long time coming. Certainly it's one of the big issues that the people in Bridgewater, where I live, ask me about on a periodic basis. And I think it's about time that we actually move forward and actually do something about it and actually respect the wishes of the trust. It's a modest request, and as the material indicated, council made something like about $1.9 million out of the sale of the Bridgewater Retirement Village. So it's not like we haven't made some money out of this thing, and so a modest allocation of around about $70,000 I think is a reasonable thing to consider. So I commend the motion.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Osterstock, would you like to speak to the item? Would anyone like to contribute to the debate? Yes, Councillor Gallagher.
Thank you, Chair. Just firstly, a question.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a legal form or paper that actually has moved the trust from the original piece of land to Carapook Park?
Yeah, my understanding is yes. Yep.
It is illegal.
Yeah, so that was requested through the Supreme Court.
Can I make a comment about it then?
You can debate the item now and sort of incorporate that into your debate if you wish.
Okay, thank you, Chair. As being a new councillor, I've had to do a fair bit of reading up on this one, and I will admit that I actually don't know where Carapook Park actually is in Bridgewater, and there was sort of no map to actually identify where in Bridgewater it is, which would have been very helpful. Having read what has happened in the past, etc., and the consultation with the ratepayers there, I find it actually quite surprising that we would actually build something like this at Carapook Park. It seems that most of the people, well, a fair majority, were actually against that because they wanted it as an off-leash dog park, and that also it's mentioned that it was never actually affected by the Ash Wednesday fires. So it seems like a really unusual place to build a monument to something where it never actually occurred. It would be like building a monument to the Stirling Shopping Centre that burnt down and building it over at the Stirling Woodyard. It would make absolutely no sense. And that's sort of how I feel with this as well, is I think some residents have come up with some other options where this could be done. And I think if it's an off-leash dog park, a memorial / garden isn't probably really a fitting place to be built, as well as other comments made by the ratepayers. So I think if we've spent the time having consultation with ratepayers and they don't deem it really the right suitable place for this kind of memorial, and I thank the Todd family for the original donation of the land, that we should actually be looking at a more suitable site that it should be built on.
Thank you, Councillor Glasgow. Do I have, yes, Councillor Cheetah, would you like to speak to the item?
I'd like to ask a question.
Sure.
Can I just get some clarification with the motion in its current form that part 2 is resolving to consider the allocation at the next budget, so that is not committing us financially? Is that
That is
correct?
correct, yes.
Cool. Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Boyd?
Yeah, I have a question also through you, Acting Mayor.
Mhm.
I'm just wondering, I'm very familiar with Carrabrook Park, go there all the time. It's a very well-used dog park. And I just wanted to confirm that if we were to put a memorial in Carrabrook Park, surely it could still be a dog park. We're not going to undo that, are we?
The intention would be that it would remain an off-leash dog park.
Would remain so.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
this decision is solely about considering whether there be a memorial and garden at that site, but it would still remain primarily as an off-leash dog park.
Well, can I speak to the?
You can speak to the item, yes?
Yeah, I touched on it before. It's a wonderful little and well utilised park. It's quite visible from Mount Barker Road when you're heading towards Bridgewater from Aldgate. There's people gather there all the time, and I think that it would be a wonderful spot for a memorial. The event was life-changing for so many people in the hills, and I think that we need to acknowledge that we do live in an area which is at risk of wildfire, and that anything that we can do to help families still grieving by putting a memorial park monument up would be a great thing to do. And I agree wholeheartedly with Councillor Mudge. And I think that budget seems reasonable to me as also. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Boyd. Just before I go to you, Councillor Herman, I do have 2 questions for the administration, just following on from what Councillor Glasgow was talking about. Firstly, is it feasible for the administration, should the council wish to investigate that, well, is it possible for the administration, should the council wish them to do so, to investigate the feasibility of moving the requirement of the trust to a more appropriate location? And secondly, is there likely to be significant cost associated with that? You may not be able to answer that, but I just came to mind after his debate.
Yeah, through the chair, we can absolutely investigate that. I've commenced it, but haven't got the answer to what it might cost.
Okay, so would you be looking into that irrespective?
I can certainly do so.
Okay, so I'll go to Councillor Herman, who was first, and Councillor Cheetah, Councillor Boyd.
So mine's a question to the director. The estimates given on the 26th of August, $70,000. Well, we're nearly 3 months down the track. But if this went through as it is, by the time the money flows in July next year, 70,000 won't cover the costs anymore. So I just wonder, what we have up there, there's no dollar value, and that's Councillor Mudge, that's very wise not to put the dollar value in the resolution. Have you got a feel for what the 70,000 might be, say, this time next year?
Yeah, I'm reasonably confident that's an accurate figure. We actually, the majority of the costs that were built around it was actually a higher figure to begin with, was Carrabrook Park's own topography in creating the pathways, additional picnic benches and shelters, etc., etc. So I'm pretty confident that 70,000 is a pretty accurate figure for a memorial to be erected.
Thanks.
So just a further question on the answer before about investigating the other site. If we pass this resolution, will that preclude identifying another site?
Ms. Ballantyne?
I can make the response to the investigation part of your deliberation in next year's financial bid, so I can have that ready. So for next year's annual business plan and budget, when you contemplate this issue, so you could pass it tonight, but then because noting it's just to consider for the 26-27 budget.
So if,
So that could give that information could form part of whatever we're provided as part of the budget process,
yeah,
and then we could ultimately make a
the
decision
site,
at that
the s-
time
Yeah, the site
Yeah.
could change.
if the elected body felt that was appropriate. Yep.
So the options, thank you.
I will go to Councillor Woolcock first because I do recall your hand being up, and then come over to Councillor Cheetah. If you could just turn your mic on.
I'd like to ask a couple of questions, if I may. On page 30, so talking about the estimated cost of implementing the terms of the Trust of Carapoot Park, it says it would be $100,000 and then all things broken down equal to $70,000. And there's also no allocation for landscaping or plants as part of that garden. So I'm just trying to understand the accounting.
Yeah, so the landscaping gardening aspect was the $5,000 that Councillor Mudge
Still
pointed
isn't-
out. That was accidentally not in the original table, but that would make up the 70. Although that does not explicitly explain the difference between the 100 and the 70. That may be a typo, or I'll ask Ms.
It's just an error. It's an old cut and paste, and it was modified to answer the previous question on notice.
Okay. So then I have two more questions. One, when were these figures actually derived, and are they pertinent to today's economy and the costs?
Oh, I think Ms. Ballantyne did indicate they were actually. She feels they're accurate at this point in time, and then ultimately, because there isn't a cost associated with the resolution, if that changes significantly for any reason, up or down, that we can consider that as part of the budget process.
Okay. And then my final question, if I may, was the public consultation occurred in 2022, so 3 years ago, almost to the day. What is the lag between the public consultation and actually actioning the terms of that trust?
I don't know if Ms. Ballantyne can answer that. She wasn't here, but I'll see what she wants to say to that.
I suspect because the memorial delivery of the trust in the memorial was rolled into a mini master plan for Carapoot Park. So it was a bigger piece of work of which it was consulted on. Rolling that entire park out, I think, is what the delay has been. If we hone in on the memorial aspect for the 1983 bushfires, we can give you that $70,000, which is a more accurate fee, and we can bring it forward to the 26-27 considerations to deliver that element of the trust rather than a renewal of Carapoot Park. So I believe that's the delay.
Councillor Cheetah, you've got a question or you want to debate?
Debate, thank you.
Sure.
I do want to thank everyone for their questions, really insightful questions on an issue that sometimes can sort of go through smoothly. And a couple of points that have been raised that I do agree with. I think memorials such as this for such major events should be accessible to all, and I'm not sure that an off-leash dog park with the comfort for everyone to attend that is necessarily the right place, having run that through my head. I also agree with Councillor Gladigo on the location. I think there, in terms not necessarily the dog park, but in terms of where the fires occurred, where the impacts were, I think there is a level of appropriateness that we can consider. I think a lot of the questions that have come through tonight give us an opportunity to maybe revisit and have a look at how this could play out and what we can play with. I don't think the motion that Councillor Mudge has put up precludes us doing that. There are no financial implications. It is really, in my mind, and Councillor Mudge can correct me in his right of reply if he wants to, it's bringing the fact that we committed to an outcome to the trust to the forefront to make sure that something does happen. And so I don't believe that would be too difficult should this motion get up. So I am going to support the motion for the reasons that are up on, for the motion that's up on screen, because I don't think it precludes any opportunities to make some adjustments as we go along.
Would anyone else like to speak to the item? Councillor Huxter, then Councillor Woolcock.
Thank you, through you, Acting Mayor. I wonder if there is an opportunity to vary this a little bit, noting what Miss Ballantyne said about her investigation on the side about appropriate location of the memorial, whether we could add in some words about for the necessary works at Carapook Park, Bridgewater, or a more suitable.
So
Or is-
I can propose some wording because I kind of drafted listening to Councillor Gladigo, that prior to the 26-27 budget process, the administration also investigate the feasibility of moving the requirement of the trust to a more appropriate location.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Okay. So would I would say that's probably an amendment as opposed to a variation, or variation. Okay, then I'll just read that out once more, see if the mover and seconder are comfortable with that, and then I'll get it built into the minutes if they are. That prior to the 26-27 budget process, the administration also investigate the feasibility of moving the requirement of the trust to a more appropriate location. Councillor Mudge, would you be happy to accept that variation?
Yeah, look, I'm happy to accept that.
Sure.
I'll talk about some of the stuff that's been done
No worries.
in the past.
Councillor Osterstock, you're happy? Okay, so I'll just get that wording and seek leave of the meeting to incorporate that into the motion itself. Leave is granted. So I'll just read it out slowly. That prior to the 26-27 budget process, the administration also investigate the feasibility of moving the requirement of the trust to a more appropriate location. Okay, so that variation's been accepted. Now, Councillor Huckster, did you wish to speak to the motion? That was more a question.
Well, may as well. Thank you. I think this is a really great outcome, to be honest. I think that the questions that were raised have sparked some good thought around the chamber. And I think we would all agree that the outcome, we all probably want to see the same outcome, but if there is a better location for it that will be more meaningful and be something that people can reflect on, I think that is a good result. So I commend the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Walcott, you'd like to speak?
Yes, I commend the motion. Personally, I don't believe that we should be looking at changing the location again, given that it has already undergone a change and that's gone through the Supreme Court process. But I support the motion as it currently stands. I believe that there's been a significant delay in between when the terms of that trust and actually actioning the conditions of the trust. And I don't wish for any further delay, so I support it.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to the item? Councillor Mudge, your right of reply.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. Yeah, look, I just wanted to point out one thing. In the question I asked in August, I did ask how will the implementation of requirements of the trust affect current activities at the park, including off the lead dog exercise? And the answer was that it won't affect the current activities. So staff believe it is consistent with that. Going back, there is also some history of the reason why Carapook Park was chosen. It did actually go out for public consultation, and there was one submission, and it was to move it to Carapook Park. I have since then had a number of people approach me and saying that something along the lines of Councillor Gladigo's comments, that it would be more appropriate down the other end of Bridgewater. A.L. Vincent Reserve was, for example, mentioned. However, I have assumed that given that we had to go to the Supreme Court last time, that this would involve massive legal fees to move the location again. So I'm happy for us to investigate it and stuff, but I actually think we're probably going to find it's just not worth the time and the effort, and we just need to get, after 30 years, just go ahead with it. And so I thank Councillor Wilcock for her comments on that. I think it's been so long that we just need to move ahead. But I'm happy to for the investigation to occur. And as Councillor Cheetah says, this is not a final decision. This is just for consideration in the budgeting process for next financial year. So I commend the motion.
Okay, with the debate closed, all those in favour to please indicate. That is carried unanimously. Move on to item 11.2, which is another motion on notice by myself. Given I'm in the chair, I will move the motion, but I will not speak to it until the right of reply. I'm not leading the debate, which feels odd, but that's the way it is. Would someone like to second the motion? Councillor Cheetah, would you like to speak to it?
I would, thank you. Thank you, Acting Mayor Daniel, for bringing this to the chamber. I think there was a bit of an oversight. I'm going to give a little bit of a story, so please bear with me on the realisation of this when we made our changes from the Stirling markets paying their traffic management fees and associated fees through a grants process, whereas now that they pay for those directly to the council. And the story is the Hut and the Stirling Christmas Pageant. I was made aware that the Stirling Christmas Pageant, which receives significant funding from the Stirling markets, was part of those funds that were provided from the markets, which are potentially at risk for the pageant, given that resource is not available to the markets to hand out in a grant-style fashion. Now, we do have a grants process, community grants program that is accessible to groups and organisations like the Stirling Christmas Pageant. But what for them it highlighted was a lack of probably clarity and transparency about if we're going to change the financial structure and the way that we manage those funds, it should be quite clear that those funds are not being taken away from the community, that total value is going back, and how we go about doing that. So I think this is a good way to address that. I think it was a bit of a gap in our thinking at the time, and I support the motion.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to contribute to the debate? Councillor Herman.
Yes, thank you, Acting Mayor. I think this, from a strictly accounting viewpoint, is the correct way to go. But I'll debate in a minute. I did have a question. So for the current round of grants, which close
End of
shortly,
September? Or they've closed,
they've closed, will that $18,000 be available for distribution in this current financial year?
Yeah, it would be.
It will be.
Mm-hmm.
So then, point 4, the resolution or the motion, whether additional grant streams should be added to enable the distribution of these additional funds before the 26-27. So
That should say after.
Can you clarify that point? We've been told, as I understand it, the money's there this year, it will go out. So what's the need for number 4?
Oh, no, that's correct. Yeah, so that's stating, hold on, just let me.
I just wonder why we need it.
Ms. Charlton?
Through you, Chair. So the wording here of an additional grant stream is not additional funds, but whether the total pool of funds, rather than it being added and having a larger pool just for the community grant round, whether we offer a different type of grant, so like an activation grant or a Main Street grant, I'm just making it up, but whether we offer a different type of grant to target a specific need in the community consistent with our grants policy. So my interpretation of the wording of the motion is that if the council resolved as this motion, the additional funds would be added in the 25-26 year for the community grants. So they would be available for this grant round, which is currently being assessed. So we still have capacity for the team to go back to the applications and add more to be recommended. But that for next year, the administration would look again at what grants we offer and consider whether, now that there is additional funds available, we want to target a different grant program offering consistent with the grant policy.
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Chair, so essentially for this if this were to be endorsed this financial year, the additional funds would go into our existing community grants program, but then prior to next year's round of grants, the administration would consider whether there were alternate grant streams that should be created with those funds, and that would obviously
I think I understand that. Although in the community grants and correct me if I'm wrong, currently there's sort of a nominal provision for energy saving projects.
So that's the recreation facilities. So that's the
but
other
there's
grant
still
stream.
still one pool for recreation, and in there's a subset for energy projects. I just wondered why we need to separate this out and just leave it in the community.
So this is community development grants.
Community development pool with a notation that $18,000 may be for some innovative purpose. I'm not going to object to it. Just wondered why.
Okay. So this, just for clarification, this, if it was to be endorsed, the additional funds would go into the community development grants, not the facilities grants, and it's the facilities grants that have that sustainability component built into it. All right, would anyone else like to speak to the item? Councillor Councillor Mudge, and then I'll come to a question from Councillor Cheetah.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. Yeah, look, I support this motion. I just wanted to make a comment about that point 4. The way I understand it, and members who are here may remember that when we did the review of the grants policy, there was some comments, and I think we incorporated it into the policy that we were interested in looking at new forms of grants to try and target areas which are underserved. And for example, the sustainability section of the facilities grant, I don't think has been used up in its full amount every year. And there are other sort of things that we thought were worthy of receiving some grant funding. And so I think what this is basically saying is that the administration is going to investigate whether there's another grant stream that we might like to have. We might like to have a youth grant or something like that, or whatever, and actually allocate 18,000 or 20,000 to that. But that's the way I see that point 4. But I commend the motion.
Councillor Woolcott, and then Councillor Grant.
Just with the community grants, so that amount of money going into the community grants program, and that the community grants program has closed,
Correct.
from what I believe. So for those entities that are currently affected by this change, will they be able to apply for that money?
So my understanding is that the applications have currently oversubscribed that grant scheme, so it would mean more of the applications, providing they fit the criteria, would actually be awarded grants.
But not necessarily to those people who will now be underfunded due to the change.
No, okay.
If they haven't already applied.
No, so the money used to be distributed by the Sterling market, which we have no control over how they would distribute that. Community grant scheme had applications open through the duration of September. They've closed. There was a certain pool of money that was originally available for that. The grant scheme has been oversubscribed, and by allocating the additional 18,500, I assume the staff would be awarding more grants with that additional money, subject to those applications meeting the criteria. So there's certain criteria they must meet. Does that answer your question?
Yes, so the question really is, if people haven't already applied for the grants, they don't have the option of
but there was
accessing this now additional funding.
No, but they would have applied in the first instance, you would assume.
They have, yeah.
Yeah. Councillor Grant, would you like to speak to the item?
Yeah, just briefly, thank you, Acting Mayor. I support this motion. This is the sort of thing that's tying off loose ends, a little bit like the previous motion, which is always good to see. Regarding where allocating the grant scheme, I think the administration are well placed to determine where the need is or where the demand is greatest and what will best complement what the Sterling market was previously administering. But I think our administration is probably very well placed to distribute those funds, so I support the motion.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to the item? Okay, I'll keep my closing remarks brief. It does overlap a little bit with what people are saying, but I guess one of the key reasons I did bring the motion to the chamber is through those previous discussions in a workshop, there are a number of elected members that ask that question or raise a prospect that, okay, if they're not giving out this pool of money into grants for our community, what's going to happen with it? And when we endorsed the lease, we didn't actually incorporate that into the motion. So if we were not to do that, it would go into general revenue. I think that would be a disservice to the community, because that means we're essentially deciding that a lower amount of grant money should be distributed to our community groups, and we know that we get a lot of value for money from that. The other 2 points I did want to make is that I think it improves the process. So we have a really robust process around how grants are awarded. And the other point is that I think it opens up for more equity across the entire council, because I doubt many of our community groups that are not close to Stirling would even be aware that that grant scheme exists, and therefore that it opens it up for the entire council to apply for additional funds that might be available. Okay, with the debate closed, all those in favour please indicate. That is carried unanimously. So we'll move on to administration reports now. So the first one being the naming the bridge in Mount Torrens. Before I come to you, Ms Ballantyne, do you have any new or additional information you'd like to provide?
No, as read, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Councillor Herman, you indicated you wanted to move something.
Yes, I'll move as printed with the addition of Townsend Street as to clearly describe the position of the bridge.
Okay, would you like to speak to the
I
item?
will speak to it. Thank you, Acting Mayor. I have pleasure in moving this motion, which will implement the wishes of the Mount Torrens and wider communities. And I commend the Mount Torrens and Districts Community Association for its work in bringing this matter to the council. The Bennett name has been associated with Mount Torrens since the early 1860s, some 165 years ago. And as we heard earlier in the evening, Andy Bennett lived there for 93 of those years. The report from the director lucidly sets out the reasons for naming the bridge over Angus Creek, the Andy Bennett Bridge. It was interesting to read the community engagement outcomes from page 130 of the agenda, and I commend the staff for the analysis of the feedback. And I really had no idea of the intense investigations that goes on when we do a community engagement exercise. It is quite elaborate. The interesting features are some 301 people responded to the consultation, including 264 who signed the petition. Support was received not only from the Mount Torrens residents, as you'd expect, but as far away as Bridgewater, Lyndoch, Tunkilla, Inglewood and Williamstown, demonstrating how well Andy Bennett was known in the district. 89% supported the proposal, 2% had some concerns, and only 9% were opposed, and not really opposed, but they had other suggestions. The verbatim feedback on page 145 of the report and pages that follow includes comments such as a wonderful tribute to a character larger than life in Mount Torrens. He represented our history and culture. A fitting tribute to someone who served his local community. A man who was the epitome of active citizenship. There is a desire from the locals that the final approval from the Commissioner of Highways will be given in time for a formal recognition on the first anniversary of Andy's passing, which would be about March 2026. That would give the Commissioner of Highways about 3 or 4 months to deal with the matter, and it will be a question that I'll be following up with the CEO regularly to see how progress is that going, because it's really a key date, that March the 26th, for the erection of the sign or some formal recognition. I commend the motion to the chamber.
Okay, do I have a seconder? Councillor Gallagher, would you like to speak to the item?
Thank you, Chair. I endorse what Councillor Herman has just said. Having been a Mount Torrens resident all my life, Andy's still got another 30 odd years ahead of me yet. I've got to make up. But Andy wasn't what I would call an icon of the town in his workshop that he had, and he's probably crossed that bridge more times than I've had hot lunches back and forth to his house on the corner opposite the hotel. Andy was a fantastic fella and a jack of all trades, and if Andy couldn't fix it, it couldn't be fixed, which is probably why there's a fair bit of junk lying around Andy's wild workshop. But he was a wonderful person, and I thank the Mount Torrens and Districts Community Association for bringing this to the council. It's a deserving tribute to the man Andy was. He was a friendly character. Everybody got to know Andy. and it was a sad day when he passed on. The only thing I would like to see, and I'm not sure how we would do it, is that the bridge did have some recent works done to fix it up a bit, but they didn't actually paint it, which I was hoping they actually would. So it would be nice to be able to dress it up at the same time as hopefully he gets his name on that bridge as well.
Thank you, Councillor Gladego. Do I have anyone else? Councillor Huxley, you'd like to speak to the item?
Yes, I'd just like to say this is a wonderful community-driven project, and well done to you guys. Credit to you. Hope you feel like you've accomplished something.
Anyone else? Councillor Grant?
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor. I really enjoyed reading this report and reading about the remarkable Andy Bennett. I think a character like this, it's great recognising a regular person, but an exceptional person at the same time, but just a formidable member of the community. And I think it's good to acknowledge that there are good members of the community that don't achieve great heights in conventional ways, but they're just good, solid members of the community who I guess part of the cement that holds it all together. So yeah, I really enjoyed reading it. So it's good effort.
Thanks, Councillor Grant. Anyone else like to speak to the item? Councillor Herman, you don't need a right of reply. The debate closed. All those in favour, please indicate. That is carried unanimously. We'll move on to item 12.2. Ms Ballantyne, do you have any new information you'd like to provide the Chamber in relation to this item?
No, thank you. Take it as read.
Okay, so there is an addition that is up on the screen. The funding for the implementation of the Native Virgin Conservation Policy be considered with the preparation for the draft 26-27 ABP. So that would indicate that there was not necessarily funding in it for actioning it or putting energy into it. Someone like to move something in relation to this, or you got a question, Councillor Grant?
Yeah, if I may, through you, Acting Chair, just the title of this policy, and it has been commented on in some of the feedback, because it's essentially, and it says itself, it's a policy providing a framework for assessing permit and lease applications, determining operational and regulatory responses. I know that wouldn't make a good title, but the title itself is not revealing. I don't know if that's something that could be considered and changed outside of this meeting. But the question is it a good title, and can the Brains Trust come up with something better?
I'll ask for the administration's thoughts, but I anticipate that if we endorse something tonight, the name couldn't be changed ad hoc after that.
Agree. I'm not sure that fits in the nomenclature addition that we have in our. I have my manager of open space here. Would you have anything to add to that question, Damien?
Yeah,
and
if you'd like to come up and
Councillor
share your
Parkin's
thoughts.
position.
Through you, Deputy Mayor. In response to that question, the term encroachment policy is a term to define all aspects of actions within native vegetation. So that's a common term that's used to describe all those actions that are covered by this policy.
So you referred to the term encroachment, but that's not part of the name. Not in our resolution anyway, or recommendation.
My apologies, through you, Chair. Yes, that stand corrected there. Yes, the actual term of that policy is to, and that was a reiteration from a previous edit. I'll comment on that. The native vegetation and conservation policy is really to define those terms, which are referred to being encroachment within private land. So the conservation aspect of that. And the term of native vegetation in the title is specific to that type of vegetation. So, conservation of native veg.
Okay, I guess the question from Councillor Grant more is that like this is for a specific way of conserving native vegetation and whether the administration, because that's quite a broad name for a policy and could be interpreted in a variety of ways. Did the administration consider whether there's better terminology that could be embedded? Maybe not what Councillor Grant stated, which was about 4 lines long, but and maybe you've considered it and this is what you feel is most appropriate, but I think that's what Councillor Grant wanted to hear a bit more about. If you've had thoughts about alternate names and why you maybe chose to not choose something else.
Yeah, through you, Deputy Mayor. This title was purposely selected as a broad title to incorporate quite a lot of situations associated with conservation in native vegetation rather than specific application of a particular situation. Yeah.
Thanks. Councillor Mudge, did you have a question?
I just had a question on page 225 of our agenda. It actually has the draft policy and the title on there is Native Vegetation and Conservation Impact Policy. So I had, and there is in the report some discussion about the title and some potential suggestions for other titles for it. And I guess my question is if the draft policy that's here is different to what's in our resolution, which is correct. What's the title?
Yeah, so I guess the question. So the question is the administration's view that word impact should form part of the policy name or not? So in the resolution it currently says Native Vegetation and Conservation Policy, whereas in the policy itself the word impact's being added in, so it now says Native Vegetation and Conservation Impact Policy.
Through Deputy Mayor, that is correct. It is proposed to incorporate the term impact in there to further define the title, and that was obviously a topic of quite a lot of discussion. Is the name so?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so there is the opportunity to obviously amend that motion or recommendation if someone feels that's the most appropriate name to include the word impact. Councillor Grant. Oh, do you want to maybe grab Councillor Parkins and then that way that can stay there?
This one over there.
It's all right, we've got one. So did you have another question, Councillor Grant?
Yeah, perhaps a way as a question, would you consider it may be more clear to have the title being Native Vegetation Encroachment Management Policy or something along those lines?
Through Deputy Mayor, that is correct. There was two options that were proposed. One being Native Vegetation Conservation Encroachment Policy, the other one Native Vegetation Conservation Impact Policy.
Okay, so we've got a few different names bouncing around. What I'm going to look to is someone to move something and they may want to consider that name that they put into the motion.
Yeah, if I could move the motion, could you please say the first one again?
So Native Vegetation and Conservation Encroachment Policy.
I'd like to put the motion with that as the name of the policy. Sorry, I probably missed that in the report. There was so much to read and I had so much pleasure reading all the feedback and the feedback to the feedback.
Can we just update that in point 3 as well?
And point 1.
Yeah, and point 1. Now, because all right, Councillor Grant, would you like to speak to your?
Yeah, thank you. I would. Can I first say it was an excellent report. There was an enormous amount of information in there, and I think the consultation process was excellent, and I think that's something this council does extremely well. And the information gathered from the consultation, I think, has been incorporated well and added to the document to some degree. especially the person who submitted email feedback number 2 had excellent comments. Some of them were fairly strongly worded, but staff gave extremely good replies, and I just found it informative. I'd encourage everyone to read it. Some of the criticisms, I think you can understand why they were made, and I think it's worth remembering that in the past we received, I don't remember how much, it might even be $400,000 a year from the Landscapes Board, or then the NRM Board, before it's changed by the under David Spears when it was changed to the Landscapes Board. That was $400,000 that we received to do native vegetation management on roadsides. We don't get that anymore, and some of the criticisms from the consultation probably aren't aware that we simply don't have the same resources. I don't know how we can fix that, but we have to acknowledge we're not doing as much as we have in the past because we haven't got the resources, and some people have noticed that. But I think it's worth seeing that the feedback to this showed incredibly strong support throughout for the protection of native vegetation. As I say, many of the criticisms were that there wasn't enough being done for native vegetation, and it's resource intensive. But yeah, Adelaide's land and roads have, over 2,000 hectares of native vegetation. It's a lot. It's a lot to manage, and it's really hard for us to cover that all. I think one of the most cost-effective ways for us to manage native vegetation is to manage encroachments in clearance, and that is stop it and do what we're obliged by law to do, and that is police the lands that we're holding on behalf of the public to make sure other people don't damage. And sometimes that's a job that we have to do, and if that involves issuing infringements for people who damage native vegetation on public land, so be it, but that's our job. So, look, I just want to thank the administration for an excellent report. I think this policy is good. As with all policies, it provides guidance for how we go about our business. So I commend the motion to the chamber.
Thank you, Councillor Grant. Councillor Mudge, you'd like to second?
Yes, I'd like to second and speak if I could.
Sure.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. Yeah, look, I had a good read through this policy, and I must say that I was really impressed by the amount of attention that staff paid to all the comments and trying to respond to each one. It was very impressive, particularly that person who created a Word version of the policy and put comments all the way through. I thought that was pretty impressive, the response to all of that, with all the history of all the different land management agreements that we've created since 2012, I think it was, and things like that. I did want to make just one little comment. I think it was the feedback that we got from, I think it was the Conservation Council. There was a comment about the CAP approving native vegetation clearance. I just wanted to clear up, the CAP doesn't actually approve native vegetation clearance, and I think it's in the report, but it's actually a Native Vegetation Council that approves clearances and things. So it's not actually within the scope of the CAP. So I just wanted to clear up that sort of misunderstanding. There are a lot of misunderstandings, I think, about the limited powers that council has to actually stop some of this clearance from occurring and things. But I think certainly this policy goes a long way to pushing council to exercise the powers that it does have, and express our values in the sense that we actually value native vegetation and want to conserve it in our area.
Thank you, Councillor Mudge. Would anyone else like to speak to the item? Councillor Herman?
Yeah, just briefly, I'll be supporting it. The number 3 I asked to be added in because on page, in the report, page 164, it made a fleeting reference to funding the implementation of the policy at all cost. I'm very uncomfortable about those sort of words being used because we don't know what that might be. It's really an open check. This one, again, it's an expenditure which we can consider with other competing priorities in next year's budget. So,
Thank you, Councillor Howard. Would anyone else like to speak to the item? Councillor Gladego?
Thank you, Chair. A question, first of all, to the council. Who owns the roadside beyond the boundary fence to the road?
Who owns the roadside? Yeah, it would depend on the road, but typically council.
Council road. So if it's a council road, who actually owns that?
Between the
verge?
road and the fence,
Mhm.
typically council. Yes.
Okay.
But I'm assuming there'd be exceptions to that, as there often are with titles throughout the hills.
Typically, council's correct.
Yeah.
Okay. As a landholder who has about a kilometre of roadside, and it's always a contentious point of, especially if I get a notice to say that I've got to spray the gauze on the side of the road, and I go, it's not my side, it's not mine, but it belongs to the council. But for some reason, it becomes a landowner's responsibility. I look at this the same way and say, as much as there's a lot of work gone into this, as a landholder who has a kilometre of boundary road, I'm lucky enough not to have a roadside native vegetation marker outside any of my property, but I've got one very close to the edge of it. Now, I've lived in my property for 30 years. I'm yet to see the council come along and manage that native vegetation marker area for any non-native weeds, etc. And dare I say, after the Cuddly Creek bushfire went through, I'm yet to see the council come along and manage the roadside yet. I do my own spraying and I do my own mowing when I've got the hay mower on to trim it off a bit to try and keep my own bushfire prevention going. But after the Cuddly Creek bushfire went through, that following year, the wild oats would have been 6 foot high in certain areas, and no one comes along and manages it. So I think this is a very interesting part.
Just let's stay on track with the motion itself, which is about this policy, not about roadside.
What I'm saying is that I
in
don't
general.
believe this policy is actually workable because the council doesn't actually do it.
Well,
It doesn't matter if it wants to have a native vegetation management policy, then it needs to manage the roadside vegetations, which it puts markers, etc. on, because as a landholder, I'm managing a fire risk myself. It's not managed by council, and this makes it really hard as a landowner to go, how do I going to manage that grass, etc. And I've seen people out brush cutting areas, etc. because of it, because they're trying to do their own bushfire management, because it won't be done by council. When you talk of 420 kilometres of vegetation markers, that's a fair area to cover, and 1,819 hectares of blocks of land. And I'll give it to anybody in this chamber who can, on the list that's actually in here, who can actually tell me where every one of those pieces of block of land actually is in the council area, because I don't know where they are, but I doubt that we actually manage them. And I think we're actually putting the council at risk of litigation going forward if there was a bushfire and something happened in an area that we haven't maintained.
Again, I think you're getting a little bit out of scope with the item itself. What I will say, though, with respect to the management of blue marker sites is I know that there is funding within the budget where blue marker sites are managed, and there is time and hours that go into those sites. And you would have seen in the policy appendix where that person did provide significant feedback that there were a number of specific values which were articulated about the number of hours that went into sites. For example, Mimi site, one person said, oh, well, it's never been managed, but there's actually been hundreds of hours that have gone into it. But I do acknowledge your point that there is a lot of sites and a lot of land to cover, and that is always been a challenge for this council, both with respect to native vegetation, also just management of roadside verges. Yeah. Would anyone else like to speak to the item? Okay, just before I go back to you Councillor Trescothick. That's okay, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. I'm just like to kind of second my support for Councillor Gladego's position. Having been born and bred in the country, I think there's a lot of roadside to look after, and I've seen some of these native markers pop up in my area, which I think is great. We're trying to look after native veg, but on the other hand, at the moment, there's trees down the road in the native veg spot that are on the side of the road that haven't been cleaned up for months, and I think it's more about encouraging relationship between the landowners or the farmers and council to work together. And I think these native vegetation markers and some of the, I suppose, the restrictions where around them in regards to the landowners aren't allowed to do anything there is risky, especially when it comes to bushfire prevention and management. I just think the council's taking on a lot of responsibility, which could have unintended consequences long term, because I just don't think we have the resources to keep the sides of the roads under control.
Councillor Huxter?
Ask a question,
Sure.
please. Potentially to be taken on notice. Does the administration think that we are putting ourselves at risk of litigation, as Councillor Gladigo said, if there was a bushfire and we haven't cleared roadside vegetation?
Ms Ballantyne.
Thank you. Through the chair, we do have a road reserve and annual slashing program that manages our roadside vegetation twice a year in the summer periods. The simple question, Councillor Huxter, of whether we're putting ourselves at risk in terms of bushfire mitigation, if we extrapolate that out, all native vegetation reserves would be considered a bushfire risk. It's what we can reasonably do with the resources we have. Granted, this policy sets Adelaide Hills Council out in front. It's an attempt to fill a gap between the state government's Native Vegetation Act and the role and function of council over its land holdings. So it is going to trial a new policy framework that came from a very community-driven place. So I'm trying to be quite balanced here. There's a lot of unknowns in the implementation and application of this policy, hence the inability for us to include an implementation budget allowance at this stage. But we've been through certain instances and examples where such a policy framework would have seen a very valuable methodology for this council to have taken some action, obtained some compensation which could be reinvested into the way we manage our roadside verges, our services and our precious parks and reserves that we have. So it is not something that's got a lot of precedent in the local government space. We are getting out in that policy world to have a go. This policy will have a review timeframe which we can address its actual impact. There'll probably be an equal amount of instances where we'll be very grateful for having this policy and others where we'll be challenged by it.
Yeah, no, I guess particularly for the newer members, this policy came about when there was a motion endorsed which had a number of aspects to it. I think it firstly came about because of the illegal clearing that happened on Mount Lofty Road, and that was separate because that's on private land, and we're expressing concern about that and wrote to the Native Veg Council about the need for them to strengthen it. But it was also out of concern about the legal clearing of high conservation value sites on our land, on council land. And then through the I guess, development of the policy process, some of you who might recall the workshop itself, there are a number of explicit examples where it showed significant removal of high quality biodiversity and that we lacked a structure or the administration lacked a process and a structure they could follow to deal with that. So that was part of the reason that this came about. But I do also note your concerns in general about, roadside verges. Councillor Grant, if no one else wishes to speak, I'll go to you for right of reply.
Yeah, thank you, Acting Mayor. Thanks to everyone for their contribution. I think it's important. Part of the reason I asked for the adjustment to the name of the policy is it's not as broad as it sounds, and it did come out of specific instances where people moved their boundary fence on the council land or decided to use a valuable bushland reserve for BMX tracks and jumps and things, and we weren't well equipped to deal with it. So this assists with that. The issue of roadside vegetation and landholders. I'll just address things because I think there's a couple of misconceptions. Roadside vegetation management's a shared responsibility of council, landholders and the Landscapes Board. Landholders aren't prohibited from doing stuff on roadsides, but they are meant to have a permit. I think it's a section 62, yep, or thereabouts. You'd easily find it. Controlling weeds is a shared responsibility. Protecting native vegetation is also a shared responsibility. And I'll just say in terms of bushfire, Cuddly Creek and Sansa Flat were 60 or 7% grass fires. They weren't native vegetation fires. So that's bush is part of the issue, roadsides are part of the issue, but native wild oats are, their core business, and weeds are certainly something to be addressed. And as for the resourcing of doing this sort of work, I await budget discussions when Councillor Gladigo and Councillor Trescothick will raise this again, because I'll fully support you. We need to resource controlling weeds on council land in order to build the goodwill with landholders so that they don't feel their efforts are futile. And I agree that it's incredibly important, because otherwise it sets a bad example, and apologies if I went off topic.
The debate closed. All those in favour to please indicate. Those against. The motion is carried. We'll move on to item 12.3, frequency and duration of elected member leave of absences. Does the administration have any new information they'd like to provide the chamber? Councillor Cheetah, you'd like to move something in relation to this?
I would, thank you.
What would you like to move?
I believe, sorry, I'm going to turn around and look at the screen. I can see that what I circulated earlier is up on screen. I'll just check it before I speak. Yeah, cool. So yes, thank you, Acting Mayor. This motion tonight seeks to address what I believe is a policy gap within our current governance framework. Over the past term, we've seen how circumstances around elected member leave can be complex and at times uncertain, not only for those taking leave, but also for the administration and the wider community observing how council operates. Unlike many other councils across the state, Adelaide Hills Council currently does not have a formal leave of absence policy that provides clarity, structure, or consistency for managing these situations. This motion asks that the CEO prepare a draft leave of absence policy by March 2026, incorporating feedback gathered from the recent elected member survey. The intent is to capture the real experiences and perspectives of those who have engaged with this process and translate that into practical policy guidance. Importantly, the draft should consider a number of key elements, such as reasonable notice periods, how and when reasons for leave are recorded, and ensuring there are appropriate maximums for leave within a 12-month period. At the same time, it should also acknowledge individual circumstances, especially when it comes to medical, carers, maternity and paternity leave. This motion also includes a request for the CEO to write to key sector stakeholders, including the Local Government Association, the Southern Hills Local Government Association, and the Minister for Local Government, seeking advocacy support and opportunities to pursue legislative amendments to elected member leave and allowance provisions. This step ensures we are not working in isolation, but contributing to broader conversations about the consistent and transparent standards across the local government sector. This motion is not about criticism. It's about consistency, transparency and accountability. A clear policy helps both the elected body and our administration navigate these matters with fairness and professionalism. It also improves the community confidence in how we manage ourselves as their representatives. I also want to acknowledge that this motion is not about prescribing outcomes before discussion. It is about setting a process, trusting the CEO and administration to bring forward a well-considered draft informed by feedback and best practice examples from other councils. If successful, this draft should come to a council workshop early next year, which will be an important opportunity to capture the perspectives of our 3 new elected members, ensuring their views and experiences are reflected as part of the policy development process. In short, this motion is seeking to strengthen our governance and supports our administration and enhances the transparency and accountability that our community expects of us.
Thank you, Councillor Cheetah. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Boyd, would you like to speak to the item? Sure.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. I very much agree with the spirit of this motion, and had this motion been in place sooner, I may have escaped the front page of the Courier twice. This year, I have suffered an acute medical condition of a personal nature. I was very unwell. Although I provided 3 medical certificates to governance over this period, it was only after the publicity around my leave that I was informed I would have needed to grant permission to supply these medical certificates to council for my leave to be noted as medical leave. This did not happen. I support the approach of City of Burnside and think introducing a clause such as a maximum of 3 months leave of absence per elected member in any 12-month period, whilst providing greater consideration for medical, carers, maternity and paternity leave provisions. Regarding the idea around reducing our meetings from 2 per month to 1 per month, this would not only help with reducing leave of absences, but would also save the administration $110,000
Just going a bit off topic there,
per
Councillor
year.
Boyd.
So it would be great if this could be further explored and come back to us at the workshop. So yes, I agree with the motion and would welcome a workshop on leave of absence.
Thank you. Do I have anyone else who'd like to speak to the item? Councillor Stock.
I don't know if this is an amendment, Acting Mayor, or not. My suggested amendment would be 1, as it is. 2 would be that this matter is adjourned for a period of 6 months.
That would be, I would say that's a completely different motion, Councillor Stock. So you can speak to this item if you want, and then if you could move something different if it's not passed, but that's completely different.
I'll enter the debate. I appreciate the intent that the mover is seeking to achieve. However, quite frankly, I don't think it's necessary now that we have a new chamber. Clearly, the council was endured problematic situations previously, and hopefully, and I'm quite confident, that those problematic matters have now been resolved with the election of our three new elected members. I think that the best course of action would be for this issue to be deferred or adjourned for a period of 6 months, and then brought back to the council for further consideration. And in that 6-month period, we can be in an informed position to see whether or not the new council requires such a policy. Prior to the difficulties that this council endured over the last 2 years, leave of absence was not an issue, in my view. Someone wished a leave of absence. That leave of absence request was listed on the agenda and determined by the elected body on a case-by-case basis. And in my view, that worked quite well. So I think this issue would be best served by the new council having a period of 6 months to reflect on how this council is functioning, and then be in as I said, in an informed position to make a decision as to whether a leave of absence policy is necessary. So I won't be supporting this motion in its current form.
Thanks, Councillor Stock. Councillor Grant, you wish to speak to the item?
I'd like to put a formal motion that the
Sure.
question be adjourned to the 28th of April 2026.
Okay, so just to note with the formal motion, there is no debate on that. All right, so I can have someone, if they wish to second that formal motion.
Do I have a question?
If it's yes,
It's
depending on
relevant.
what it is.
Having listened to what Councillor Osterstock said, would the mover consider pushing that 28th of,
I mean, they're two completely different things.
Yeah,
One
I
is
just-
looking to proceed with endorsing a policy or producing a policy in relation to leave of absence. The other one is to adjourn and wait. So I think you're going to make, if you want to wait and not
I just
proceed,
wondered whether the move would consider the 28th of April's too short a time.
my understanding is that they consulted with the administration about what was a fair time frame for them to develop it. Is that correct? Okay, so administration are comfortable with that time frame. Okay, so we have a formal motion that's been moved by Councillor Grant. I do need someone to second that formal motion. Yep. So Councillor Osterstock is seconding the formal motion. As I said, there is no debate in relation to this, so all those in favour to please indicate. Those against, that formal motion is carried. So that is now adjourned, and we'll move on to the next item. Okay, so move on to item 12.4, correspondence from the Northern Areas Council, Drought Support and Energy Infrastructure. Mr. Lewis, any new information you'd like to provide the chamber?
No.
You've got the roaming mic. Okay, would have someone like to move something in relation to this item? Someone needs to move something. Councillor Grant, what would you like to move?
Yeah, thank you, Acting Mayor. Look, I can see no harm supporting the motion that supports the Northern Areas Council proposal. I don't see that if this was successful, and I think it's a long shot, but I don't see it's going to have any budgetary impact on us, because what I understand is asking the state government to assist with rates reductions or offsets. But I think it's worth, so there's no harm in it. Yeah, and the request from the Northern Areas Council, I can see why they've asked for it, and I think it's fair to provide support to them. I'm sure it's particularly important for them farms affected by drought and struggling to pay rates. I wasn't aware that energy infrastructure land was rate free. I think it'd be perfectly fair if they paid rates as everyone else does. It wouldn't affect us at the moment, but it may in the future. It's really for the state government to provide incentives for generators of alternative energy, not the local government to carry. I think it's unfair. But I'm sure we have other issues as well, and certainly contact's been made about businesses affected by the downturn following COVID. This is very specific. I do think we have to think about more widely than farms affected by drought. Of course, businesses are affected as well, but that's not within the remit of this. So I support this initiative, and it'll be interesting to see what the state government response is.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Huxter, do you wish to speak to the item? Would anyone else like to contribute to the debate? Okay, so I assume no need for a right of reply, Councillor Grant. With the debate closed, all those in favour please indicate. That is carried unanimously. We'll move on to item 12.5. Mr. Lewis, is there any new information you'd like to provide the chamber?
No, nothing to add.
Councillor Herman, would you like to move something? No, I think they're all, yeah, anyway. Yes, with his roaming mic. Can you just turn your microphone on, Councillor Herman, and you can move and speak?
You tell me to turn it off. Thank you. I'll move the recommendation as printed and on the screen, and we'll talk to that. But before I do, perhaps if you look at page 402 of the agenda, there's a heading there, prior year correction of error. So I'd just like to ask the Director perhaps to explain that to the chamber.
Mr. Lewis?
Yeah, through the chair, I'd be delighted to. So this correction comes from the processes that we're going through in the preparation of the 24-25 financial statements. I think as the chamber will be aware that through 24-25 we did a lot of work on the depreciation calculations. We made a number of changes throughout the year, which has challenged our financial reporting. This in completing the 24-25 financials, we've pretty much finalised that process, where we identified some of the ICT assets needed to be the depreciation needed to be changed. That was connected with useful lives, and some were actually written off. So we did engage with our auditors, BDO, on the appropriate accounting treatment and the confirmation around reasonableness of the proposed useful lives. And this has been accounted for in the previous year, 23-24. And this means that we can now accurately report what each year is. So the 24-25 is as accurate as we can get it, but also the restated figures for 23-24 are also as accurate as we can make them. The impact is an adjustment to the opening retained earnings in 23-24, and a change to the 23-24 depreciation by $75,000. So the result for 23-24 worsened by $75,000. But that means that the figures we've got going forward are absolutely correct.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Would someone like to second the motion?
I have to speak.
Or you can't? Okay, hang on. Sure.
I asked the question, Acting Mayor. So if I could just speak briefly to the statements. First of all, the Audit and Risk Committee met with Lynn Doe, who's the engagement partner with BDO, our auditors, last Monday. We met independently of the staff for about half to three-quarter an hour, something like that, Councillor Mudge. And we were given a very good open explanations of what had transpired during the year. Quickly, there's an operating surplus of $592,000. A lot of that was with the timing of the financial assistance grants of about $1.something million on page 416. First time in the statements, there is a statement about the operation of Fabric, which will publicise how that is travelling. Just an interesting observation too. Waste management has increased from $5.1 million to $5.6 million. It's getting a huge chunk of our expenditure, and it's something that the council needs to address. I'm not sure how we do that, but it's a large chunk. But pleasingly, energy costs increased by only $8,000 to $686,000. So that's a remarkably small amount in my view, in view of the energy crisis that we hear all about. So that probably reflects our initiatives of using a lot of solar panels and things like that to reduce our costs. Another not so good note, the legal costs are $832,000, and from what I could ascertain, the highest on record, and reflects the 1.6% of our rate revenue. The good thing about BDO have, and it's in the recommendations, they've issued an unqualified audit report, both for the financial statements and our internal controls. So the council and the administration be congratulated on achieving that. And that is ultimately a measure point for the operations of a council. And as a presiding member of the Audit and Risk Committee, I have signed the Certificate of Auditor Independence together with the CEO, as shown on page 458. The financial stability ratios, we're keen to see those. The operating surplus is 0.09%, which is in the range, Director, isn't it? 1.9?
Yes.
It's very, very close.
Yeah.
I know it is in the range, so it's 0 to
not
1%.
quite.
Yeah.
The range is 1 to 5%, we're 0.9%. But again, that shouldn't be taken in isolation because of the extra grant that we received. Our net financial liabilities ratio of 40% is well within about mid-range, and the asset renewal ratio is just outside the range, but on the positive side, it's 105%, and our range is 100%. So I commend the statements, the adoption of the statements.
Thank you, Councillor Herman. I will make one point about the cost for waste. If the state government didn't charge $166 per tonne for our waste, which amounts to well over $1 million each year, it would be significantly less.
Maybe it should be an election issue.
Maybe. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Mudge, would you like to second? Do you wish to speak to the item?
I think Councillor Herman said it all.
Thanks. Would anyone else like to contribute? Councillor Grant?
Yeah, thank you, Acting Mayor, and I believe I heard Councillor Herman mention the word waste. I just remind members of the chamber that 60% of what people are putting in the landfill bin shouldn't be there. It's green waste, it's metals or other recyclables.
Link it to the item, Councillor Grant.
Well, Councillor Herman was asking where we could make a saving, and if we could get people to put stuff in the right bin, it would save us nearly $1 million a year. I support the motion. One final point, the high legal costs are something we should be concerned about. Our ratepayers be worried about this, and I think we should apply our minds to keeping it within reasonable levels. Legal costs are necessary, but our ratepayers, of course, will be concerned, and this is something we apply ourselves to. No offence to Mr. Kennedy, he does a very good job.
All right, anyone else wish to speak to the item? And you did link it well to the statement. No need for a right of reply. With the debate closed, all those in favour to please indicate. That is carried unanimously. So we'll move on to item 12.6, legal fees analysis. Mr. Lewis, any new information you'd like to provide the chamber?
I know of no.
Someone like to move something? Councillor Mudge, do you wish to speak to the item?
Yes, thank you, Acting Mayor. This item was considered by the Audit Committee last week as well, and I think we all agreed that it's a contribution to transparency of spending for this council, and it's quite clear when you actually look at the report. There are a number of sort of, extraordinary expenditures for legal items there. Obviously, there's the behavioural stuff which we all know about, but there's also, I think, note of a significant expenditure, and I don't have it in front of. I'm not on the right page at the moment, but for the planning department, basically for legal stuff, and I think a lot of that has to do with the Supreme Court appearance on the OTR issue. One thing I wanted to note was item 4. Which says, and this is something that the Audit Committee put in, basically, and I guess it's a reflection of Councillor Grant's comment on the last item, that we do need to keep an eye on the legal issues. We considered that it would be prudent for the council, at least until the end of this current financial year, to see how it goes, to have a quarterly report on legal fees, so that we can just monitor how that's going. We think that's a sort of a prudent sort of time frame. If it seems like it's not adding any particular value, then we can stop doing it. But we certainly want to try it for at least until the end of this current financial year. So I commend the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Mudge. Councillor Grant, you'd like to second the motion?
Yeah, I would, but I'd like to ask a question.
Sure.
Just looking at the figures for the current financial year, which looks like we're travelling below the budget, is that actually really a real representation, or is it simply because bills haven't come in yet? I don't know if anyone can comment on that.
No, so if you are on page 513, on the right side, the actual expense should be compared to the year-to-date budget, not the full-year budget. So that indicates that it's tracking over the budget.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I didn't read that correctly. Anyway, I'll happily second the motion, and I'll speak briefly. Like I thank Councillor Mudge for his introduction to the item. I'm glad the Audit and Risk Committee, who do an enormous amount of work, have taken a close attention to this matter. It's important in serving the interests of ratepayers that we do so, and we keep a close eye on it. There's a number of items identified there that that we've asked, this chamber's asked the administration to do. They're expensive matters that have served, to my mind, the interests of ratepayers well, but there's been a number of exceptional matters that have done that. But we have to be mindful of every penny we spend, and I believe that's what we're doing.
Would anyone else like to speak to the item? Okay, so no need for a right of reply, Councillor Mudge. With the debate closed, all those in favour to please indicate. That is carried unanimously. We'll move on to item 12.7. So I will just reiterate my material conflict of interest due to the first decision, whatever you make with respect to the potential extension of me in that role. Obviously, I will have a pecuniary benefit or loss. So for that reason, I'm going to vacate the chair and come back once you've decided on that.
Sorry.
Is this a question I need to be in the room for, or?
Oh, it's a procedural question.
Yes.
Yeah. In my reading of this, and I stand to be corrected, you have a material conflict of interest in respect to decision 1, numbers 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Is that correct?
Yes.
Well, surely we could...
Yeah, you can consider that separately and then I can come back in the room.
Right, okay, thank you.
Okay, elected members, if I could seek leave of the meeting to see if we could appoint a presiding member. Show of hands, seek leave of the meeting, thank you. If we could put a nomination forward to preside over this item. Councillor Grant? Oh, sorry. Is that okay?
I would support Marcos.
I'm happy for Councillor Grant and I'm more than happy to share my plan.
Okay. So that's supported, that Councillor Grant will take the chair. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
CEO. Okay, Councillor Osterstock, did you have a proposal?
Yes, I have. My proposal is decision 1. I seek to move decision 1, items 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 as the first motion.
Yep. Would you like to speak to that motion?
I think it's self-explanatory. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Osterstock. Would anyone like to second that motion? Councillor Herman.
Quite happy to second it, and I agree it's self-explanatory. It'll get us through till the results of the mayoral election, which are in February.
Thank you, Councillor Herman. Does anyone else wish to speak? There being no debate and Councillor Osterstock needing a right of reply, could I have a show of hands in support? So it's carried unanimously. And I think my job here is done.
It is.
Thank you. And thank you.
Thank you. It's been,
you did a brilliant job.
It's been good working together.
If we could,
Should I get?
yes, please. Thank you.
Bring back the mayor.
Deputy Mayor.
Deputy.
Acting Mayor.
Only another 3 months until the election.
Okay, so they just move 1 through to 5.
1 through to 5. Yeah. Done. We just took the 1 to 5 from the first one. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
Just take them out of the second one. That's the...
Sure. So we have moved 1 to 5. So I understand that there are multiple elected members who are wanting to nominate for the role. So in that case, it would be appropriate to move what is now up on the screen, which was originally 6, 7 and 8, in your agenda item under decision 2. And that will essentially say we'll have that role and we're going to adjourn the meeting and then go through that process which the administration will run. So does someone want to move something? Councillor Mudge, what would you like to move?
I'd like to move it as printed, well, as displayed on the screen.
Sure. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Grant. No debate. All those in favour to please indicate. That is carried unanimously. So the item, the meeting is now adjourned. I'll pass it over to the CEO who will run the process.
Sure. And, thank you, Acting Mayor. And what I will do is if I could defer the matter to our Governance Officer, Michael Cullity, to run the process, if that's okay.
Okay, well,
Unlimited. Okay.
Just use your mic.
Okay, so the first step in the process is to identify those elected members who, of course, wish to nominate for the position. Oh, okay. So, Councillor Grant. Did you have your hand up? Councillor Huxter. Just Councillor Huxter. Yes. Yeah. Five. So, just to be absolutely clear, we have 5 nominations according to what I've written down. We have Councillor Cheetah, we have Councillor Grant, we have Councillor Huxter, Councillor Herman, and Councillor Woolcock. Haven't missed anybody. Okay, so those names now have to go. So, has every member been given a ballot paper to complete?
So the question is, if it is a tie, what do we do?
We pull out 2 names. The first one is excluded, the last one remaining.
You're okay with it?
Yeah. No.
Scott.
So, by way of practice for next year, I will call out the names. First name out is number 1 on the ballot paper. You write it down. So, first name out, Councillor Huxter.
Yep.
Yeah, just right.
Yes, just for now. So, Councillor Huxter, number 1. Councillor Grant, number 2. Councillor Woolcock, number 3. Councillor Cheetah, number 4. And that leaves the final one. Councillor Herman. There you go. Box back there. Okay, so they're the 5 names. Now, as I understand it, under your procedure, we now give each of the members 2 minutes, up to 2 minutes, to explain why they have nominated and why you should vote for them. Start with Councillor Huxter.
Thank you.
We go through the ballot papers.
Am I good to start? Thank you for allowing my nomination for Acting Deputy Mayor. As you all know, I put my hand up for the general election in 2022 because I love my community and I love our small towns. I want them to be great places for people to live in and for our kids to want to stay living in as they grow up. In the 3 years I've been on council, I've learned a lot. I'm involved in a number of local community groups and have fostered many great relationships with local leaders. I've been a board member on the Adelaide Hills Region Waste Management Authority. I'm the current sitting board member for the East Waste Board and I'm a member of the CEO PRP. I'd be confident enough to say that those of you who've known me for a while would agree that I'm always true to myself and I wouldn't be putting my hand up for this role if I didn't think I was truly a great fit for it. I believe I represent our community very well and residents feel that I am approachable, open and honest with them. I think there's a real opportunity here for residents of the Valleys Ward to feel more represented in the chamber by having a key leadership role held by someone in their ward. I strongly believe that success in a role such as this is built on fostering and maintaining effective relationships with people, and I fully understand that a difference of opinion does not equate to disrespect. It's an important skill to be able to understand and accept someone else's point of view, even if it doesn't align with your own. Whilst a major part of the acting deputy mayor role is stepping in for the acting mayor to attend events and front up to the media if required, it should not be discounted how much time is invested into leading the elected body. Leadership, again, is a very important skill to have and one which I believe I carry. I'm a very pragmatic thinker and a responsible decision maker. I don't like to let perfection get in the way of process or progress, but I understand how important it is to ask questions and consider things from different perspectives before making a decision. Most importantly, I am a professional and I'm a great representative of this council. I've had many informal conversations with residents over the years, whether it be at Foodland, at the footy, at the post office or at the gym, and most often people are just generally interested in my role, what I do, what it involves, but when there's a specific matter that they'd like to discuss, they know they can count on me to provide information or get back to them once I know more.
And that's the 2 minutes, Councillor.
Perfect. Thank you for your support.
Okay, Councillor Grant.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Kennedy. And can I just say, I think we're spoilt for choice. It's very healthy for the chamber to have a number of admirable candidates putting up their hands for this. And I first want to acknowledge that the work, especially the Deputy Mayor has put in over the past 12 months, has been a big job. And Councillor Cheetah for stepping in as Acting Deputy Mayor. I think it's good to change things around. I haven't put up my hand for this role in the past, and I've been here 7 years, but on this occasion, I'm offering myself up because I think it's particularly important at the moment to support and assist the Acting Mayor, who we've already asked so much of in recent times. And it's particularly important at the moment because of the transition period while the elections for mayor are going on. I guess I'm offering up my nomination here because I feel my experience in many facets of council business and my knowledge and adherence to policy and process will help provide stability and certainty when we need it most. In the time I've been here, I've been on a number of committees and advisory groups, and I'm a reliable attendee to all of them. And what I want to say, I guess, now is that I think the working of this chamber is exceptional at the moment. It's a real pleasure to be amongst the people who are here, and I feel that the chamber is really working to serve the interests of ratepayers as we should. I think the job we have now is for the public face of the council to represent to the community that we're working hard to
That's
ensure.
the 2 minutes, Councillor Grant.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Wilcock.
Hello. Well, thank you very much for this opportunity. I realise that my nomination may come out of left field, given that I've only been a councillor for a few weeks, but I do feel that it is an opportunity for renewal, refreshment, a different face and a really positive spin on this chamber, one that won't come around again. I come with absolutely no baggage, just carry on only, and I am really keen to be more heavily involved within the chamber and also within the community. I have no preconceived notions about how things should or could be done, and so what I offer really is to support the current acting mayor in his role and provide somebody that can be trusted and relied upon for him over this crucial period of the next few months. I do feel that the position of mayor will be highly contested and it will be a key time frame. I'm a very willing learner, able to be guided, and I do want to learn all of the process and procedure. In terms of my capability, I'm proficient, professional, responsive, and most of all, concise. I'd like to help reshape the perception of this council and the narrative around it, particularly as a woman, that it's supportive of women in leadership. And so I would encourage you to consider that with my nomination. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Wilcock. That was less than the 2 minutes. So now we move to Councillor Cheetah.
Thank you everyone for the opportunity to nominate again for acting Under the Local Government Act, the Mayor, by extension Deputy and Acting Deputy, plays a critical role in ensuring our council operates with transparency, accountability and fairness. The Act reminds us that our duty is not only to make decisions, but to model good governance and grow confidence in our community. The Deputy Mayor's role is to support the Mayor and Council in maintaining high behavioural standards, fostering order in our meetings, balance in our debate, and respect amongst members. I have a prior experience in chairing meetings at a variety of organisations. My recent university graduation, again, has demonstrated my capability to research and consolidate information effectively. This would also support any engagement with media that should arise during the short term. Throughout this term, I've taken my role as elected member as a full-time commitment. I've maintained exemplary attendance at council meetings and workshops. I regularly represent council at events, community and civic events across both the valleys and ranges of Ward. I value being present, engaged and accessible to the people we serve and my fellow elected members. Equally important, I have built and maintained constructive, respectful relationships with every elected member, both those currently serving and those who have since moved on. I would assert that I've also fostered highly productive and collaborative relations with both the CEO, Mr. Georgopoulos, and the Acting Deputy Mayor, Councillor Daniel. I've consistently aimed to approach each matter before us without bias, with an open mind, and focus on the outcomes of our health. As Acting Deputy Mayor, I will continue to bring my steady, consistent, inclusive and collaborative approach, supporting the Acting Mayor, promoting unity and effective governance, ensuring faith and balance, and every member feels heard and valued.
Thank you, Councillor Cheetah. Again, within the 2 minutes, which leaves us with Councillor Herman.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. In support of my nomination, I offer the following. I've had 15 years' experience on council under 2 mayors and now under Acting Mayor Daniel. Particularly from Acting Mayor Daniel, I've observed how he manages, and I have learned the ways to run an efficient meeting and to avoid disruption to the business of the Chamber. I have a good understanding of the local government procedures of meeting regulations, but would seek advice from the CEO and or governance on tricky procedural matters. I'm currently the presiding member of the Audit and Risk Committee and have been for about 6 years. This has provided me with the opportunity to provide leadership of members without exerting undue influence. The Audit and Risk Committee conducts a self-appraisal annually on all members' performance, including the presiding member. The last survey results show that all members, that's 5 of us, including me, considered that the presiding member, quote, is effective in preparing for and the conducting of meetings. I have also been the casual acting chairperson of the Gawler River Flood Management Authority as the need arises, but that is not very often, although I was acting chair when we had a bit of an issue appointing our CEO at the time a couple of years ago. If elected to this position, I will not be eligible for any extra remuneration as I already receive an additional allowance as the presiding member of the Audit and Risk Committee. My term as presiding member expires next month and an independent member will be appointed as the presiding member. That's government policy. I now have additional time to devote to council duties and should not have any difficulty in representing...
Thank you, Councillor Herman. Sorry, that's the 2 minutes. Okay, now I just remind members that this is a secret ballot and the time has come for you to now cast your votes against the 5 names. I will then collect them and... Sorry, Councillor Mudd.
This is a full preferential vote.
Preferential vote.
So, yeah.
Yeah, 1 to 5.
1 to 5.
Yeah.
Yep. Just to make sure.
I will then collect them and with the assistance of, and I don't know who that will be, a member who is not a nominee or a council officer, go somewhere else and count them. Sky, it's you and I. Thank you. So if you can just indicate or... One.
Oh, wow, cool.
Yeah. You should Google them. Amazing company. Which room do I use? The breakfast room?
Ah, so it's all made out of complete recycled material. The brand's called Trash. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, hang on. Got young kids. That is pretty cool.
Between Christmas and New Year, used to be offices closed down. You still get the 3 grace days or?
No.
So you got 4 weeks left. And if you take time off for Christmas and New Year, you get that. How do you leave it?
If you're a shift worker, you'll get, and you're rostered for that day, you will get a penalty. If you're a day worker, you need to, you can take leave on that day. You don't, it's just like a public holiday, just a.
What we got left?
Oh, there we go.
That was part of the agreement. 3 days.
I'll let you. All right, if I can just get the elected member attention back to the front so we can find out what your decision was or our decision.
Okay, we are pleased to confirm, after undertaking 3 counts, that the preferred person is Councillor Huxter.
Well done, Councillor Huxter. Do you have a conflict you might want to consider?
I think I might. Can I please declare at this point a material conflict of interest, as I will receive a direct pecuniary benefit, I think, and personal.
Personal benefit.
Personal benefit. That's actually what I wrote down here. So I will leave the meeting.
Thank you. Okay, so just noting there is that slight adjustment with the wording, I assume likewise with the previous motion. Someone like to move something in relation to this, Councillor Osterstock? Or would you like to?
Thank you. I'll move the recommendation as printed.
So with that addition and Councillor Huxter's name should be in both spots. Do you wish to speak to the item?
No, I just think that Councillor Huxter will be a very good representative for this council in the role of acting deputy mayor. And I congratulate her on her impending appointment.
Thanks, Councillor Osterstock. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Grant? Do you wish to speak to the item?
Yeah, just very briefly, I only repeat Councillor Osterstock's words. Councillor Huxter's an excellent person for this position. She's shows great integrity, intelligence, capability, and I think she'll represent the face of council if the opportunity arises extremely well.
Thank you, Councillor Grant. Does anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Boyd?
Yes, I too would like to congratulate Councillor Huxter. And I just wanted to clarify, won't she be the deputy acting mayor, not the acting deputy mayor? I'm sure she'll be the deputy acting mayor.
Acting deputy.
Yeah, so it's wrong.
No, the correct is acting deputy mayor.
Okay, so I've got that wrong. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else wish to debate the item? Okay, so no need for a right of reply. With the debate closed, all those in favour to please indicate. That is carried unanimously. If we could, someone invite Councillor Huxter back into the room, please. So I know we've been going for a while, but I don't feel that there are any big items remaining on the agenda. So I think if we just continue to work through them, that would be the preferred approach. Okay, congratulations, Councillor Huxter. Okay, so we'll move on to information items, the first one being the principal office opening hours. Ms Charlton, do you have any new information you'd like to provide?
No, happy to answer any questions.
Someone like to move something in relation to this? Councillor Mudge, what would you like to move?
I'd like to move it as printed.
Do you wish to speak to it?
Briefly speak to it. This is something which I think has probably been a long time coming. It's always amazed me in the past, in the 7 years that I've been on council, that we don't have a shutdown over that Christmas New Year period, as is common across private and public sector. I guess my comment would be, I think it's something that could potentially help with excessive accrual of leave as well. So I think it's a good move. So I commend the motion.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Grant, do you wish to speak to the item?
Oh, very briefly, thank you to Ms Charlton to report. Thank you to Councillor Mudge for putting the motion, and I fully support it.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to contribute? Councillor Herman?
Yes, I did question the 3 days, grace days, and I worked in the public service years ago, and we used to get 3 weeks leave and 3 grace days over Christmas. the government of the day changed those rules. They generously gave us 4 weeks leave, but took away the 3 grace days. So I'm not sure that Councillor Mudge's comment about help reduce accrued leave would be correct, as I understand, and this administration can confirm that. These 3 days are in addition to the normal, in addition to the normal 4 weeks leave granted to officers.
Yeah, that's correct.
That's correct.
Would anyone else like to debate the item? Councillor Mudge, no need for a right of reply.
Can I just ask a question about
Yeah,
that?
sure.
So does that mean if there's 5 week, if like Christmas, New Year, there's 3 grace days and then there's public holidays, that means that...
And a weekend.
And a weekend.
Okay, every week, I guess the timing of that closure would change depending on where the public holidays fall.
Yeah.
So I guess you're right in the sense that it could deal with some accrued leave if there's like, for example, opens up back on the Thursday, someone might take the Thursday and Friday off.
Yeah.
And so the grace days itself, though, don't deal with that.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so sometimes it will. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, with the debate closed, all those in favour please indicate. That is carried unanimously. We'll move on to 13.2, CO KPIs. Someone like to move something in relation to that? Councillor Huxter, do you wish to speak to the item?
Yes, I will, thank you. We had our CEO PRP meeting a couple of weeks ago, and where we ran through the CEO's, how he's tracking against his KPIs. We had the new independent member join us for her first meeting, which was a little bit tricky because she was on Teams, but she seems very excited about the position. But the meeting was good. We went through in quite a lot of detail all of the performance indicators, and we all agreed that everything was on track with a few questions and a few comments. But yeah, commend the motion as it's written on the screen.
Councillor Cheetah, did you wish to second the item?
Yes, thank you.
Do you wish to speak to it?
I'm just going to add in, given Mr. Kennedy is here tonight, because of some of the changes we've got with our performance review in terms of the updates and the actual review processes. Mr. Kelly was kind enough to indicate that at the update stages, he possibly doesn't need to be present, which possibly means he wouldn't need to bill us for those times. So that's a slight change, which will make a small dent in our legal fees. And I thank Mr. Kelly for providing that thinking.
Would anyone else like to speak to the item? No need for a right of reply. Councillor Huxter. Debate closed. All those in favour to please indicate. That is carried unanimously. We have correspondence for noting. It is recommended just to note those in block, given there's only 3. Would someone like to move something? Councillor Herman.
Before I do, I had a question.
Sure.
Page 641, 14.3. I'm just getting it up myself, so... Everyone have it? Because I haven't quite got there yet. Here's 639, 40, 40, 41. Top local government complaints received about local government. Adelaide Hills Council's at just the top of the list because it's alphabetical order. But 28 complaints were received, which is about one every 2 weeks, which could be high or low. So I asked the question to the administration. I personally would be interested, the nature of the complaints. And the response that I received from governance, the Ombudsman produced a confidential quarterly report to the CEO, which provides a greater amount of detail on complaints. Should an elected member wish to access more information than the annual business plan, such as confidential quarterly reports, a request can be made to the Ombudsman, who will determine if the request can be granted. Well, that's probably a waste of time. I'm just curious that 28 complaints and we don't know anything about it. I don't know what other members feel. Anyway, that's my comment. But it's a rhetorical question.
That's your debate. I mean, it's a fair point that the processes are there that when we need to know about a matter, that it'll be brought to our attention. And, you know, we don't know if 28 of those were vexatious. So when it's appropriate, we'll be made aware of a complaint. Someone like to second? Yes, Councillor Grant.
Yeah, thank you, Acting Mayor. And I'll just comment on that same annual report from the Ombudsman, which I'd encourage everyone to read. The role of the Ombudsman's incredibly important. I don't know how many people are aware the Ombudsman has very few powers or powers of enforcement. They have powers of investigation, and that the role is so crucial because it can shine the spotlight. And it's surprising how powerful a thing that is. I think the report said they deal with 4,700 odd complaints, but the number of complaints actually dealt with or investigated, I should say, was much, much less. And in response to Councillor Herman's comment, if complaints are made that have no merit, they shouldn't come to light. Otherwise, it would be used as a weapon. And it's important that the Ombudsman can consider complaints and put them to bed if, in the Ombudsman view, they are inappropriate or vexatious. As the Acting Mayor said, if there's merit or we need to consider them, it will certainly come before us. But the last thing we need is 4,770 complaints washing throughout local government and other administrations when many of them are fallacious. So I think the culling of matters is important. But yeah, Emily Strickland, the Ombudsman's an incredibly capable person. She's been there a number of years, and I think it's always worth reading these reports, and especially in relation to local government. There's many things to be garnered from it. So yeah, I commend the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Grant. Would anyone else like to speak to the item? No need for a right of reply then. Debate closed. All those in favour to please indicate. That is carried unanimously. Move on to questions without notice. Where there's a couple, we'll start with Councillor Cheetah. You had some questions without notice.
Sorry, bear with me.
Does anyone else have a question without notice? Councillor Grant?
Should I proceed?
Yes.
Yeah, this is probably for the CEO. It's just a question relating to the Lenswood Main Street project, and if there's anything you could comment on that.
CEO?
Thank you, Councillor Grant, and through you, Acting Mayor. I have received the Lenswood Community Group's proposal. Thank you for forwarding that. I am working with the Director of Environment Infrastructure, Jade Ballantyne, on how we're going to tackle that. I feel that we need to overlay that with our infrastructure plans for that area and see where there's an opportunity to get some quick wins. And of course, there'd be other areas where we'd have to collaborate quite closely with state government to enable some of those options that are clearly articulated in that proposal. So if you could bear with us, it is on the high priority list with the director of that department. We're looking at engaging with the community and also the key stakeholders, including state government, around pushing that Main Street proposal forward.
Councillor Cheetah, you ready?
Yes, I am now. Thank you. So first question, what was the cause for the removal of 2 Adelaide Hills Council tree assets on Pomona Road associated with the new multi-building property development? Is the responsible party providing any make good or compensation for the removal?
Ms. Ballantyne, is that for you or Ms. Chuck? What's wrong?
It's actually shared between Jess and myself, hence the delay, and we have a nice written response that we were going to pop on the screen. Is that possible? Or we can talk to it.
Oh.
So just to note, the written response does not go into the minutes unless the chamber endorse that it does. So we'll just... So I heard someone can't read it, so I'll read it out. Following an inquiry from resident council arboricultural officers assessed 2 messmate stringy bark trees on the road reserve on Pomona Road. The assessment revealed root damage to both trees and an unacceptable risk of the trees failing over the roadway. Consequently, both trees were urgently removed to reduce risk to the public. The trees were damaged in association with development works at the adjacent property. Whilst the works had a development approval, there are a number of conditions requiring the works to be undertaken using certain methods. This included using non-invasive directional boring methods to connect utility services to prevent any damage to the trees. Development compliance investigations indicate that these conditions were not complied with works being carried out by a subcontractor of a utility service. The trees in question were native vegetation, which means they are exempt from being regulated trees under the Planning Development Infrastructure Act and regulations, when they would have been considered so otherwise. Due to the complexities, the administration is currently obtaining legal advice on appropriate legal and enforcement avenues, including under the PDI Act, Local Government Act, and or other civil remedies.
Thank you for that. And I'm just going to get in my second one. Apologies.
Councillor Herman, do you want to jump in? No?
No, that's a quick one. And any news on the appeal on the A2R service station development?
Ms. Charlton? We had a chat about that yesterday.
No,
No.
unfortunately.
Quick. Is Councillor Cheetah ready? Because I do have a couple more that might take a little bit
Well,
longer.
let's just...
Filling in time, right, too. The question is, will the CEO inquire from DIT when it proposes to slash its section of the Amy Gillett Bikeway? The wild oats are getting up quite high, and they are responsible from Oakbank to Mount Torrens. That's the first question. Will you inquire and advise
Yes.
the members? Second one's similar. Will the council slash the section of the Amy Gillett Bikeway from Mount Torrens to Birdwood prior to its opening on the 13th of November?
Ms.
Because we are
Ballantyne?
responsible, I understand, for maintenance on that.
We're doing it now. Not right now.
Not at this time, but
it'll
at
be
the...
pristine
During the
by-
daylight
So,
hours.
again, another yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Cheetah, last chance, if you're ready.
Yep, sorry. Was the Adelaide Hills Council impacted by any of the recent Amazon Web Service outages and or recently publicised Salesforce data breaches?
Are you, Mr. Lewis?
Similarly, I'm just about as organised as Jess and Jade now. We have, I think we can put this on the screen as well, if that's the easiest way for everyone to see the response.
No, you could just read it out because some people can't read it anywhere.
Okay, so there's 2 breaches, both of them associated with Salesforce. There's a Qantas data breach, but this wasn't actually really related to Salesforce. There was no vulnerability in Salesforce. It was a user was tricked by a bad actor into giving away password details, which enabled them to get access. That particular issue will not affect Adelaide Hills, although it was quite well publicised. The second instance related to the Amazon Web Service failure, which did impact Salesforce, but only impacted Salesforce in North America, or instances of Salesforce using the North American cloud services. Ours don't. Ours are based in Australia, so neither actually impacted us. But we are aware. It's certainly the outage with the North American Amazon Web Service did highlight there's a potential risk that there's very little we can do to mitigate that risk, but we can have some. Certainly, it's included in our risk register now, and we're considering what actions we can take if that occurs. But in short, we weren't impacted.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Do you have an additional question? Then Councillor Mudge, and then I might wrap it up.
I just want to do a formal motion to note my first question in the minutes.
Sure. So you'd like to move that the question in relation to Pomona Road be included in the minutes, and Councillor Mudge, you indicating you wish to second that. I won't ask for debate on that, given it's just to record it in the minutes. Should all those in favour please indicate. That is carried unanimously. Okay, does anyone have a motion without notice? No, we'll move on to reports. So, as I have done in previous meetings, I'll just refer to the external organisations. Councillor Herman, do you have anything of significance to report back from the Gawler River Flood Management Authority meeting?
No, just about, I did mention briefly from the audit committee, went to the board and they commissioned a thorough investigation of the insurance of the dam wall. That's due to come back to the audit committee middle of November, I think, before the end of the year.
Okay, thank you. Move on to CEO report.
Thank you, and through you, Acting Mayor, I've changed the format on my reporting this time around. I wanted to try it out with the elected members. So I've brought pictures and updates around outcomes. So I'd like to start off with the Uradala show. Administration have been working very closely with the organisers, really about communicating the event, promoting the event, and also talking about the parking restrictions. So it can be as successful that it can be. So that's a pretty great outcome. So next one is the CRM advanced build. Just to let you know that over the weekend, last weekend, significant improvements were made around the customer experience. We're also looking at including some community feedback around how successful or how good that customer experience is. So watch this space. And that's number 2. Number 3 is Amy Gillett, the extension of Mount Torrens that you can see in the distance is the Burford Hill Bridge, and that's been successfully installed and functioning. So as you can see, it's really taking shape now, but there's still some more work to be done. And Jade assures me that we will be looking at densifying the plantings along that section, whether it's trees or complementing the biodiversity of that track as well. So that's a key project. The other one that's really interesting and it's close to my heart is number 5. Picture 5 is over the last 8 weeks, our maintenance crew now is a bit more organised. They're taking a more planned approach. And what that means is they're bundling up requests. So if there's a series of pothole requests, tree trimming requests, or whatever that nature is, it's almost like a mini blitz program. So they go out there and identify that area and tidy it up once and for all, rather than repeat visits. So it is getting a lot more organised around our maintenance around our area. And then finally, our first phase of our community engagement framework, and that was quite a successful program. It was undertaken over a 6-week period. It was around consultation around our framework and looking at what are the barriers and the opportunities for our community to engage properly and purposefully with our council. And look, we'll provide further updates as that unfolds. So any questions on those items, I'm happy to take, and I hope you appreciate the new format.
That's good. Councillor Herman,
Could I ask a question not on one of those items?
Yeah,
sure.
To you, but perhaps it might be referred on, the op shop at Gamaraka, when can we expect, is that report still on target? That's the question.
I might defer that to the Director.
Through you, Chair, it's planned for the next meeting.
Any other questions to the CEO? Okay, we'll move on to minutes of our committee. So firstly, we do have the CAP, which met on the 15th of October. Would someone like to receive and note those? Councillor Herman.
I attended that one. So
oh, yeah, you did. Seconder, Councillor Mudge. Assume no debate. All those in favour, please indicate. That is carried unanimously. Audit Committee on the 20th. Someone like to move? Anyone? Councillor Mudge, would you like to move as printed? Yeah. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Herman. All those in favour to please indicate. That is carried unanimously. And finally, the COPRP did meet on the 15th. Councillor Cheetah, you'd like to move as printed? Do I have a seconder? Councillor Huxter. All those in favour to please indicate. That is also carried unanimously. We have no confidential items. Next meeting on Tuesday the 11th, and the meeting is closed at 9:04 p.m.